Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 36 of Sir Kevin Says. Today we're featuring Gonzalo Grau. He's a pianist, producer, arranger, and composer. Excited to have him all the way from Spain. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Madrid, yeah.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going weird because
Yes.
it's been for all of us, for everybody. Last year was just insanely weird as
Yeah.
a let's say as a year, professionally speaking, personally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a weird time. And on top of everything, a couple of days ago we had a blasting snowstorm here in Madrid, which never happens. We
Wow.
never. Madrid is, maybe some flurries like once every winter, and basically, it wasn't that much. I lived for 23 years between Boston and New York, so I'm used to it.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm used to it because this snowstorm is nothing like East Coast, snowstorms or Minneapolis or Chicago.
Right.
But for let's say for Spain standards, this is basically a country that is not prepared for something like this.
Yeah.
So maybe a foot, maybe something like that. Maybe a little more but of snow. But the thing is that here, they are not prepared for that.
I saw a video actually on the news where people in Spain were like having snowball fights, right?
Well, I was part of one. It was fun. It was really fun. You could see, parents pulling their kids, the kids in some kind of plastic bin because they don't have.
Wow.
It was very fun. Actually, I got to see people on skis, like on the street, because everything closed down, everything locked down because it was crazy. Madrid is not necessarily a place where we get, of course, a winter here, but the lowest temperature here maybe 2 degrees, 3 degrees. Last winter was a joke comparing to what I'm used to. I lived in Boston most of my time in the US. Then I lived in New York quite a bit too. And I lived for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years in Washington, D.C. So you get blasting snow
Yeah.
in part of the country.
Yeah.
So for me, this is totally fine.
How long have you been in Spain for now?
In April is going to be 3 years now.
Oh, wow, 3 years. But you're originally from Venezuela, correct? Can you talk to us a little bit about your upbringing from there?
Yeah, about Venezuela?
Yes.
Sure. I was born in Caracas, and both my parents are musicians as well. I come from an artist family, I guess I can say, because not only my parents, but my entire family, they are some kind of artists, painters, engravers, and poets and writers.
Wow.
I've been involved in all kinds of art forms since I was born. But I was born in Venezuela back in 1972, so it was a very, very different time in Venezuela. Right now, we are having a brutal time, I guess. Economically speaking and socially speaking, we're having a very, very rough time right now in Venezuela.
Right.
But back in the 70s and 80s, which was I moved to Boston to study at Berklee College of Music in 95. So all my 22 first years that I basically, I was raised as a musician, young musician in Venezuela. It was a marvelous place to be, honestly. I was lucky to be in a country that it was flourishing, and I'm just basically amazing. We don't know what we have until we don't have it anymore, until we lose it.
Yeah.
We had amazing everything was it was in very good shape, I have to say, as a country. Of course, it's not that we didn't have problems. Everybody has, we still had a lot of corruption, and sure, we can talk we can talk and talk about it, but the truth is that I was lucky. I was lucky to be born in a place where culture was just like all over the place.
Mhm.
Venezuela is located. I mean, we are very lucky too because we are Caribbean. I mean, we on the north of Venezuela. That's the Caribbean Sea, so we have that as very much part of our culture, and that's why I grew up listening to salsa and playing salsa since I was a teenager and dancing, and every. I mean, to me, salsa it was basically very much the music that I was listening to. That and Venezuelan traditional music and all everything that is basically related to Venezuelan popular music. It was very much part of my daily thing that I was listening to.
Yes, yes.
But of course, both my parents are very strong classically trained musicians, both of them. My father is a choir conductor and composer, and my mother, she's a singer, let's say a classical singer,
Mhm.
and vocal coach, also a conductor and multi-instrumentalist herself. So the thing is that I grew up between choir rehearsals of my dad and operas of my mother and this and that, and I started playing cello. The cello was the very first instrument I played. I started studying when I was 3 years old. So, I mean, I was not even let's say before I learned to speak. So somehow playing some instrument, and that's the Venezuela I grew up in, honestly. So it's all of these influences, all of this music from the street popular music and the classical movement back in the day, in the 70s and 80s. It was very strong, very, very strong. That was the year I was born. That was the same year that thing called now El Sistema, or which back then was called the National Youth Orchestra of Venezuela.
Yeah.
That was created the same year I was born. And when I was 13, I joined that big orchestra playing cello. And I mean, I have the best memories from a Venezuela that it was just. I mean, we didn't know what we had, honestly.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, that until I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. That was 1995, and I was there studying for about 3 years, 3.5 years. I graduated at Berklee in '98, and then basically I stayed playing, and I mean, I guess in my original plans was not, I didn't plan to stay in the States, but as it is, I mean, I started studying at Berklee and making my second family, my extended
Mm.
family, which are my friends and colleagues that to the day I cannot be more thankful to have them in my life,
Yes.
because my family is always my family. I like to say and to think that that's not really your fault. I mean, you are born in a family, and that's your family. And some people are lucky to have a beautiful family. Some people
Mhm.
are not that lucky, but that's that. But your friends, hey, your friends you choose. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's
fault,
good.
you know. And it's I am very lucky to say that both my family, my blood family, and also my extended family, my friends, are the most amazing thing that I have in my life. Hands down, that is the most amazing thing that I have in my life. So after I finished my studies at Berklee, I was already connected with a network of friends and musicians that basically I said, yeah, I mean, I'm going to stay. I'm going to do my thing here. Uh, Not only here, because that's also another beautiful thing of the times that we live nowadays.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if I live in Madrid, still, I am very much connected to, I mean, my network of friends and colleagues is basically all over the place. Once, back in 1995, 96, 97, we were all in Boston. But now we are all spread all over the freaking place, honestly. I have friends in New York, friends in LA, friends in Boston, in Ecuador, in Venezuela, of course, in here in Spain, in Barcelona, some in Madrid. I mean, it's like we're all over the place. That core, the core that gave birth to Clave Secreta is basically spread out all over the world right now. And yet we are still connected and making music over distance because now technology, I guess I have a love-hate relationship with technology, but the truth is that one of the good things that technology gives us nowadays is that we can record at home and still make it sound amazing.
As of late, since the whole quarantine or pandemic started, I should say, I've seen you've done a lot of challenges through social media, right? Yeah. Can you talk to us about that? What kind of inspired you to do that?
Oh God, what inspired me to do it? I don't know. Honestly, the thing is that I remember that I played with a new Clave Secreta that I put together here in Spain. I played one concert with a Clave Secreta Barcelona based, and that was March 6th. And then 4 days after that, on March 10th, I played with a Clave Secreta Madrid based. So I put together a couple of different chords, and I had my best player Panayotis coming from New York.
Yeah.
I had the singer of the band Manolo and Fausto Cuevas, who lives in LA. We put together these two new Clave Secretas, and for the record, we were the very last show that venue in Madrid presented before the close down. Lockdown, that was March 14th, I believe. And basically, kind of like a month into isolation, I was like, already, it's been a very interesting process, Kevin, because the thing is that I was looking at all of my musician friends gradually becoming more and more active, like doing some kind of interviewing, type of like talking.
Something like this.
Something like that. But it's like, it was very interesting because the thing is that, okay, I mean, everybody needed to be active from home somehow. And I saw a couple of challenges here and there of people just making, and to be honest, I mean, I started making this just as a let me invite a couple of friends of mine. That's it, and I'm gonna call it Soneo Challenge, just for fun. I mean, I wasn't really thinking let's make this a big thing. No, I did it just honestly, not thinking about the challenge, but thinking about the song. The very first song that I used, it was basically very symbolic because the lyrics say La Soledad, the solitude or the loneliness in a way. Because after a month, I was, of course, by myself living here in this small apartment. And I was... One of the very things that have accompanied me for all of this time is, of course, the urge and the need to be with my family, which they're all in Venezuela, or most of them are in Venezuela, my mother, my father, and I couldn't be with them. And under these kind of circumstances that, I mean, it's not really safe, I understand that I can't, and it's better somehow that I'm not with them, but at the same time, I mean, it's the whole understanding that I don't know exactly if I'm going to see them again, and to be able to deal with a sense of, yes, I'm alone and I understand, and I'm not desperate to be with them, but to understand that we're going through something that is way bigger than us, that I am not in control. I mean, if I was in control, I buy a plane ticket and I go and visit them.
Right.
But I mean, this is bigger than all of us. It's bigger than my mom. It's bigger than me, bigger than you. I mean, this is something that, I mean, we all hope that it's going to get again under control with a vaccine and everything. But back when this started in, March of last year, I was like, wow. I mean, going through so many different emotions, and I could see the same thing with all my colleagues and friends and all the artists were trying to be somehow to be vocal about it. I mean, to say things and to connect and to be present. It was insane. The first, I guess, 3-4 months of this, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to see how everything has been changing in terms of that. I mean, now I see much less people being, active and connected. And this, most likely because everybody's trying to make money. Everybody's trying to survive. At the beginning, everybody was trying to connect and say, "Oh, okay, everybody's at home. Okay, maybe for the next couple of months, I'm just going to connect and be a little bit more loud on social media." Everybody was. Nowadays, it's not the same. Even though we're still dealing with the pandemic times, it's not the same. The psychology of the people is not the same. It's not the same. People are reacting differently. People are busy doing something else. Most of my friends, I have to say, this is very sad, but most of my musician friends, they are working, in things like Amazon or,
Yeah.
some kind of delivery service. I mean, because music is out of the picture. Forget it. Live shows. I mean, last year, 2020, I played in the whole entire year. I played 3 times, I guess, 4 times.
Man,
that's it. So we all musicians, we had to. I mean, if you have a family, you have to provide.
Yeah.
I mean, and the only things that are not closing down are the most basic need things. Delivering food, these type of things. So, I mean, all of these stories basically to tell you that at the beginning, when I saw all my musicians friends being connected and more active and every day being more, I was like, you know what? Let me just for fun. And I don't know why I started singing because I felt lonely, And maybe I was talking to a friend of mine over the phone or something like that. And I said like, well, yeah, I'm a little bit lonely here. I'm solo, right? I'm soledad. And it came to me that very old song from Adalberto Álvarez that says, "La soledad es mala consejera, canta conmigo y olvida tus penas," because everybody is having some kind of sorrow, some kind of olvida tus penas. It's like sing with me and forget your sorrow. So forget your bad times, but acknowledging that being alone, I mean, is not perhaps the best thing, Yeah. So that was to me the first motivation was finding or remembering that song. I remembered that song based on the situation that I was living. And I did that little bit of a sequence. That was kind of like part of my own thing, my own challenge that I started way before that. This is funny because I apart from my Instagram personal account, I have something else called Quickie Songs. And Quickie Songs is basically my way of protesting that nowadays social media is basically forcing you to say everything in either 15 seconds or 30 seconds, or the post is 1 minute. The longest is 1 minute. So, I mean, at the beginning, it was longer times. And the more we advance in technology, this is why I'm saying that I have a love-hate relationship with our times and technology, is because nowadays, it's very hard to say something meaningful in only 30 seconds. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I created that account, Quickie Songs. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, I've done only like eight songs. But my own personal challenge was, as a protest kind of account, was, okay, since you are giving me only 1 minute, I'm gonna make songs, only MIDI, with my MIDI studio with keyboards and everything. I mean, but I'm gonna make songs, create new original songs that are 1 minute long, exactly to the dot. That was my own personal challenge. And the song, the whole thing is that from the introduction to the very end, I wanted this minute I wanted the song to sound complete, with an introduction, with some kind of. So I did that. So taking that kind of personal challenge, I said, okay, let me invite a couple of friends of mine to sing this coro of La Soledad, of the solitude.
Yeah.
But that is only 1 minute long. Taking that as as one of these personal challenges. Okay, let me make this 1 minute long exactly to the dot, and invite a couple of friends of mine. So I invited the lead singer of Guaco, amazing singer and amazing band from Venezuela. I invited Marcial Isturiz, singer from Venezuela. Of course, Manolo Mairena, the singer of Clave Secreta. And I invited a couple of amazing female salsa singers, friends of mine. One, Javiera La Caimana, they call her. Javiera, she's from Chile, but she lives in Peru now, in Lima. And Avin Bruno, that she's an amazing singer from Venezuela that lives in Barcelona. So I invited, let's say, 8, 10 singers, friends of mine, that they are all over the freaking place. And the reaction was so amazing. But I think, honestly, to give credit to the song, I mean, I think it's well arranged, it's well recorded, it's well presented. But I think what really made it special was that I was opening a window to everybody to actually express how they were feeling about being in, isolation. And that's what I think made this very first challenge so meaningful. It was, I was the first one that I was so amazed that everybody was waiting for the next day for me to release a new one. It became kind of like, it kind of became the best part of the day for a lot of people,
Wow.
Very first thing, I remember that I was releasing every day a new one at 3 p.m., which is 3 p.m. Spain time and 9 a.m. Eastern or Caracas time.
Yeah.
It was amazing because it was people waking up, and the very first thing they did over there in your side of the country, it was just, let me see what's up with the challenge. It was amazing. It was really, really amazing. Then I did like maybe 2 or 3 more challenges just for fun. And very recently, like less than a month ago, I was like, you know what, to start the year, let me do something different. Let me really do something like way different. So I did something like a Guajira style, to give also the singers a little bit more space, not just a short soneo, but just to give them more space to say something. So I have to say that I had no expectations. It was just for fun that I did this, and I opened up this beautiful window of, for people to say something about the isolation. And in a very personal, I guess, level, these challenges have been I haven't been alone. Ironically enough, I'm singing with all of these challenges dedicated to solitude, but because of the challenge and because of the response of the people, I haven't been alone at all.
Man.
This challenge thing have been my accompaniment. It has been my partner in crime.
Yeah.
I guess, in a way. So that, I guess, that's the story of the Soneo challenge.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Let me ask you this, because you were talking about how you moved around a lot, right? You were in Boston for a bit. You were in New York. You said you were in Washington. What made you make the move to Spain?
The very first thing, I think in a way, I felt that my time, especially in a place like New York, the last place where I lived in the States was in New York. The very first time I moved to New York was in 2003. So we're talking about, I was there like between Boston and New York for more than 20 years. And I could see a big change a big change in the dynamic of the city, in the, I don't know. I guess, I mean, I don't want to sound judgmental or too judgmental about it, because I'm sure that every generation of musician is going to have their time and is going to connect with whatever is happening at their time. It's very interesting to see that, I don't know, back in the 60s, Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock and all of these amazing players, they lived in New York. They all at some point lived in New York, because New York is that. New York is the mecca for creativity when it comes to that. You know, I mean, they were playing with Miles Davis and they were playing, I mean, everything was being cooked there. But none of these musicians lived in New York. And I mean, at some point, they all emigrate somewhere, you know? I guess it's a place where you have to somehow pay your dues and be there for a little bit. But I think it's also smart to know when to get out, you know, to understand that if a place, even if it's New York, but if the place is not giving you something back to you, because you are giving a lot of talent to the place, a lot of energy to the place, and a lot of money to the place where you are living in, right? So if the place is not giving anything back to you, then what's the point? You know, easily. I mean, you could be there until, I mean, your entire life, and not really do anything. And just to say that you live in a place like New York, but I don't think that's the. I mean, if you are a solid musician, artist, let's say, you, at some point, I mean, you have to realize that you are solid enough to live anywhere and to make it anywhere.
That's good.
And you don't need to leave the struggle of a place like New York, because at the end, when you are in your 20s, that's also another thing. I mean, we all grow up and we go through different stages in life. When you are in your 20s, you don't mind to sleep on the floor or to have 5 roommates and 1 bathroom. That type of situation. That's classic New York right there. You know, you're a student and you don't care. Right? Then you are in your 30s. Well, maybe you still carry a little bit, but you know, when I decided to move here, I was 45 years old, living in Jersey, not in New York, but Jersey, Hoboken, Weehawken, actually, right next to the city, But I was living in New Jersey, in the Jersey side, with 1 roommate, right? Again, I was 45 and living with, sharing apartment, still had to share an apartment with 1 roommate, and I was paying for my half of the apartment an amount of money that it was ridiculous. You know, to the point that I had to be teaching at a school that it was a beautiful school, but that's not my thing. But I had to be teaching music at a school to be able to pay that rent. So at the end, you find yourself, making some decisions in your life to, I don't know, to live a life that is not really, I don't know, it's not really what you're looking for anymore, you know? So money-wise, it was very, very, I mean, to be 100% honest, I remember the day that I went out just to have a beer with a friend or something like that. I remember. My brother from Venezuela, my brother was blood brother. He was visiting, and it was his very last night in New York before going back to Venezuela. So check it out. I tell my brother, hey, let's go out, have a good time in a restaurant, in a nice place. So we went to a meat place to have, to a meat restaurant. And so check it out. Before the food, we had a couple of cocktails and with the food, 2 glasses of wine, 1 my brother and 1 myself. And just to tell you, just the check of the drinks was $90, and it was only 2 cocktails and 2 glasses of wine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's $90. And I'm not going to even say how much the food was, but we have to start with that. And if 1 glass of wine is $25, 1 glass of wine is $25, and I can never afford to chill and relax and treat a friend of mine for a beer or for a glass of wine. The last time I went out with Panayotis, the bass player of Clave Secreta, in Astoria. He lives in Astoria, New York, in the Greek, of course, the Greek part of New York. And we went out and we had a couple of burgers in Astoria, a couple of burgers and 1 beer each. And the bill was, I don't know, again, it was like more than $50-$60 each. And I'm like, dude, I mean, this is a burger. We were still in the position. I don't know if it's gotten any better, but again, I mean, the average gig pays $100. And it's been like that for the last 25 years, maybe more. So it's like, you know what? I mean, if you're lucky, they pay you $125 and you're like, really? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So, I mean, it's like more than half of what I make to, playing in 1 gig, it's basically a burger and a beer. It's just insane. I mean, to be a musician nowadays in New York, for me, I had it, honestly. Honestly, I was not happy. I was not happy. I had to be doing some stuff that kept me away from being able to create music, because you had to. I mean, you are overcome by emergencies or urgencies. Urgencies. We all have urgencies. The urgency to pay your rent, to pay your bills, to pay your things, and at the end, because you have to deal with urgencies first, then the things that are really important, then you don't have space, you don't have the time, or you don't have the money, or you don't take care of the important stuff. Making music for Clave Secreta or my own projects or connecting with my friends or family, you don't have time for that because you have to pay bills. At the end, that, and I guess the
tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that was when I started dating a girl from Spain, from Valencia, Spain, and again, I was 45, and I'm starting to date this girl, and she was in New Jersey visiting from Spain, and I remember that she told me in the privacy of my room, but she told me, I don't like the fact that you have a roommate outside, right? Literally outside of your door.
Man.
You know what I'm saying? So I tell you all of these anecdotes because when I basically put all of these stuff in the same bucket, I was like, what am I doing here? Honestly. Because if you tell me that, okay, well, I'm here, but I'm playing, I don't know, I'm playing every week, I'm playing in a gig, or I play like 3 times a year, I play at the Carnegie Hall. No, I play at the Carnegie Hall maybe once every couple of years, maybe even Carnegie Hall is a big thing, or Lincoln Center is a big thing. But if you ever get a gig there, I can always fly and play that gig,
Right.
To play at Lincoln Center once every 3 years, The rest of the stuff, I mean, being a local musician, most of the time, it's a struggle. It's a struggle because you have to leave the rhythm of the city, and the rhythm of the city of a place like New York or San Francisco, they're very, very expensive places to live in nowadays. Mm-hmm. So when I considered moving to Barcelona first, because basically my father was born in Barcelona, so I'm basically half Catalan, half Venezuelan. But at the end, I was like, you know what? Barcelona is going through some political rough times as well because of independentist movements and stuff like that. And so it wasn't a good vibe. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a try with Madrid. And honestly, it's been great. It's been great because especially the first year that I moved here, I said, okay, it's going to be a little bit of my own, I guess, how you call it's my work not to let go that uh, I don't want to what call it umbilical cord, but that connection to the U.S. If I lose it, then it's my fault. It's my bad. In a way,
Yeah.
what really works well of living here in Madrid is that you can enjoy being in Europe. If you have a gig in Paris, it's an hour and a half, 2 hour flight. In Berlin, it's 2 hour flight. I mean, you are connected in a completely different circuit of amazing cities. And also, honestly, I mean, if it's not high season for a couple of $100, you can travel to New York and play some gigs there too. So if it was worth it, I mean, the first year and a half that I lived here, I was traveling all the time to the US, doing stuff there, playing there, and just keeping my projects happening, which I think is a little bit of work on my side, but I'm more than willing to do it. Willing to do it because I think it's worth it. I mean, after living 23 years in the States, it would be my bad if I let that go.
Yeah.
But I'm happy. I'm happy here. Honestly. I mean, I think Spain is very much. I guess it's closer to Venezuela in many ways, especially Madrid. It feels like Caracas. I mean, it's very cool.
Yeah. A little story too of how I came to know about you actually was through a friend of mine named Gustavo Errazo, who's a bass player from Colombia. He lives out here in Los Angeles. And many years ago, we were playing at a church and he's like, hey man, because we'd always talk back and forth about what was going on in the music scene and what new music was out and all these things. And he's like, hey, I want to give you the CD. It's called La Timba Loca. And I was like, okay. I'm like, cool. And so he gave me the CD and I was like, dude, this sounds so cool, man. Like, I loved all the music. And then I searched you guys up on YouTube. You kind of share the name change.
That's funny.
Can you talk about that from what it was La Timba Loca to La Clave Secreta?
That's a very funny video. Well, the very first anecdote of that video before I tell you about the change, but the video, and you guys can go and just search for it. I don't remember the title of it, but it's on my YouTube channel. I remember that I was living at the time in Washington D.C. And it was very hard for me because in Washington D.C. the music scene, I mean Washington D.C. is like Disneyland for politics, but when Disneyland for politics. Good restaurants, actually, I have to say. The scene, it's fantastic, but the music scene is not so much happening. So in order for me to live decently in DC and still make music, and I had to actually be all the time in a bus with my instruments going to New York, which was the closest place, still 4.5 hours. On a bus to play some gigs in New York. And I remember that night, I was having a very hard time, very, very rough time. I think it was winter, and I was staying at a friend's place, kind of like a studio apartment. The studio apartment I was just by myself, and I had some tequila before in the gig where I was playing. So I was already kind of like, in the mood to do something a little bit crazy. So I was trying some really weird stuff with that video to explain why I decided to change the name from La Timba Loca to La Clave Secreta. And it's a very funny video. It's a very freaking funny. But anyway, the truth is that timba, as if you know the word timba is a style. It's basically how Cubans call their modern salsa, their modern music. The Cubans don't like to call their music salsa. That's the first thing.
Right.
but from son and everything that it was going on, like back in the 80s and early 90s, a couple of bands, NG La Banda, and some people were trying newer things. And eventually, like in the mid 90s or late 90s, Charanga Banera and even Isaac Delgado, that he was already doing his own stuff, but especially Charanga and Médico de la Salsa, they started calling that style of modern Cuban music timba. So the thing is that it's a terminology that is so Cuban, is so purely Cuban that, sure, I mean, we call the band Timba Loca because that was our beginning. I mean, we were very much into that style of playing, charanga banera and all of that. And to me, it was fun to play that. And for me, it was also like not the beginning of it, because I was already arranging even before I arrived to Berklee. But the truth is that that was the sound that kind of like inspired me to create a band. The reason for me to create Timba Loca was, okay, I really want to, I mean, even before we started making original music, it was to take very old Cuban, or let's say not only Cuban, but very old Latin songs and turn them into a more modern sound. And the more modern sound at the time that I had in my mind was, of course, the sounds of timba. So that's why we called it La Timba Loca. Loca because I guess it was cool. I mean, we were only, 24, 25 years old. And we call it Timba Loca. Okay, sure. What happened is like, that was, let me tell you, that album was released. The band was put together in 98, this very, very same year that I graduated at Berklee. Then 2000, we mixed. 2001 was the release of that album that you heard, the Timba Loca album, Más Allá de La Habana. From 2001 to 2007 was the year that I started arranging the new songs for Frutero Moderno album. Mm-hmm. And that album was released in 2008, nominated for a Grammy in 2009. So I remember that in 2007, when I was already arranging this new music and making all of this, in this time between 2001 and 2007, I had, I learned so much about the good things and the bad things of having a band called Timba Loca, right? And of course, I had my thing that I didn't really like at that moment. The name of Timba Loca, I found it like against us, and one of the reasons was that, sure, I mean, we have this band called Timba Loca, but not me, nor any of the musicians in the band are Cuban. Yet we're called Timba Loca, and timba. I mean, sure. I mean, you have a lot of people that like the style of timba, but you have some people that don't. I remember that when I released the very first that album that you say, the Timba Loca album, we did like 3 days of radio programs and interviews and stuff in Puerto Rico for that album. It's a little bit of promotion for the album, right? And I still remember to the day, and this is another anecdote. I remember that we run into this guy that he was a promoter, and the guy that was with me, doing all of these interviews, he pulls out one of my CDs and passes the CD to this guy. And the guy grabs the CD. The CD is sealed, still with with the plastic wrap. And the guy gets the CD and he reads the cover, and it says Timba Loca, and he says he's from Puerto Rico, and he says Timba Loca. Oh, timba. This might sound a little like Cuban stuff here, and he passes the CD back to me. And I was so sad and at the same time a little bit offended. But again, I mean, I was like, I mean, I understood that just by default, you're going to have a lot of people that even, I don't know if it's, I don't know, a stupid pride thing, being Puerto Rican versus being, like, I mean, I don't want to, again, I don't want to be judgmental. Why? I mean, it's like, I mean, it's a matter of taste. I mean, some people like it, some people don't like it. But if you put in the name of your band something like that, it's like labeling your music so much and so strongly before people listen to your music,
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I consider when I hear my first, even my very first album, of course, I recognize that the presence of Cuban timba is very much there, but I have to say that along the years, as I am being, I have grown as a musician. A lot of other influences of mine from classical music, from Venezuelan music, from salsa that is not Cuban, they have like come out so strongly in my music as well, and I love it. I mean, the fact that I give space to a Greek bass player to play his own thing, and I write a song called A la Griega dedicated to him with crazy scales and stuff like that. I mean, that is something that I really embrace from this project. And that's why I felt and I knew that if I didn't take that timba element from the name of the band, it was going to still act against us.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're a timba band based in Boston or based in New York, and yet I mean, we're not Los Van Van. We are not, and we're never going to be Los Van Van because we're not from Cuba. We're not from the source. So I think it was the time, especially before I released the second album, Frutero Moderno, the one that got the Grammy nomination, that I said, hey, sure, I mean, we have been around, we already have an album, but if there is a moment to change the name, is now, before we release the second one. Because after we release the second one, then what's the point, So, yeah. So I had a very nice conversation, I remember, with a producer friend of mine, Aaron Levinson, and he suggested, bro, if you are thinking about changing the name, now's the time to change it. Now, because the album, the Frutero Moderno, the next album, he told me that this sounds amazing because it's kind of like in between. Sure, I mean, there are some Cuban stuff in it,
right?
But so original. And when you hear your version of Calle Luna, Calle Sol, is like, I mean, that's gonna be a punch in the nose.
Yeah.
So it is. I mean, it is important to call. It is important to start taking the things that weigh too much or that has a negative impact to the original project. It's like, I mean, learning from the mistakes, Sure, Timbaloca was fun at the beginning, but I mean, it doesn't work. We have to learn from the mistakes. And then, sure, I mean, we call it La Clave Secreta. I came up with the name Clave Secreta, and I think it's a much more representative name of what we are, because we have our own secret thing, But that's that, I guess that was the main reason. That was the story behind.
Well, let me ask you this, because one of my favorite songs from the whole album, from Frutero Moderno, is Calle Luna, Calle Sol. Your guys' rendition. I mean, what the bass player is doing for me is like amazing. Just the feel is just incredible. And every time somebody wants to get an introduction into some type of fusion timba music, I always recommend this album. It's always been my number one. So it's just an honor to have you on the show.
Thanks.
How did that arrangement come about? Because in the song, you guys somewhat drag the time as the song progresses. How did that come about? Because it's incredible.
Yeah, well, different things. The story that I just told you about this guy in Puerto Rico that rejecting my first album, kind of like stuck in my head.
Yeah.
And I remember that I already had almost the entire album arranged and decided. Puchi Pluma, Mujer Divina, all of these songs, they were already recorded, Frutero Moderno, all of that. Sabor Swing y Saoko.
Yeah.
But
Siakara.
yeah, Siakara, all of that was already done. And I was still missing one song. And I remember that what happened with that guy in Puerto Rico. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna pick a song dedicated to that moment, or inspired by that moment. So this is a Puerto Rican guy that he was so proud, and at the same time, like rejecting something that was, before listening to it, he was rejecting something that it was Cuban-like, just because, right? And I was like, okay, so I am gonna take a song by either Ismael Rivera or Hector Lavoe, because they are the two most important icons they are like gods in salsa music, right? For in Puerto Rican salsa, that's what I'm saying. So I was like, you know what? Just like to make my own version of a song of one of these two mega idols, Puerto Rican idols. So I searched and searched and searched and listened to it, and I said, you know what? I really like this Calle Luna, Calle Sol, because the what it says, the lyrics of the song. I mean, I think the original arrangement also caught me, because the sound of Willie Colon with these trombones and all that. I mean, it was so harsh in a way, right? That I was like, okay, so Calle Luna, Calle Sol is a song that I want to dedicate in a way to that rejection that I got, you know? I'm going to dedicate a Puerto Rican song to, but I'm going to make a Puerto Rican song that talks about two streets in Viejo San Juan, Calle Luna, Calle Sol, to a very specific situation, dangerous situation in these two streets. But it's something that, I mean, these two streets are in Del Viejo San Juan. I mean, it's a very Puerto Rican, very, very Puerto Rican thing. So I'm going to take a very Puerto Rican thing and I'm going to turn it and make it my own. Not necessarily Cuban, but I'm going to make this my own. Because to me, it's been always like this. I mean, since the very, I mean, you could hear in the very first album that we recorded Nina, we recorded Tibiritábara, Besito de Coco. We recorded like 6. Half the album is not original. It's basically arrangements, my own arrangements of classics of salsa.
Yeah.
But always my shot on this is like, why after having an arrangement of Nina, like the original, why am I going to do the same thing again? I'm not going to do it again. Why am I going to record Calle Luna, Calle Sol with the same arrangement? That makes no sense. I am not going to play it better than Willie Colon. You know, I am not going to, if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to do a rendition of Calle Luna, Calle Sol, I'm going to make it so mine and so different than the original that, it makes, same thing with Mujer Divina.
Yeah.
The very original arrangement of Mujer Divina, the recording with Joe Cuba, with vibraphone, and it's so beautiful. It's so amazing that if I'm gonna do that song, I'm gonna make it radically different, so in a way it becomes mine. I have to deconstruct the song and make it mine. So that was my very first thing. So I'm gonna, on purpose, I'm gonna take Calle Luna, Calle Sol and make it mine. Then another thing that to me is very important is to connect with the lyrics of the song. That by that moment, I guess I was already arranging more like that. In the first album, I was still very young and perhaps writing more. It was more about the notes and the fast runs and the funky harmonies and when I arranged the songs for the second album, it was more about the songs. It was more about finding the core and the soul of the songs per se. And so basically I connected to the lyrics of Calle Luna, Calle Sol. And one thing I always like, because I think it's just fun, I like to quote other things within my arrangements to make little suggestions or quotes. So within the arrangement, because the song talks about dangerous place, dangerous streets, and dangerous kind of situation, then I am quoting in the mambo in the mambo of Calle Luna, Calle Sol, I'm quoting Pedro Navaja. I am quoting Fuego en el 23. I am quoting so many different songs that more or less are related to the same idea. And one of the most important motifs that I keep repeating throughout the arrangement is Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney. So again, I am using some elements within the arrangement that they are all connected to something that is dangerous and something that is, that something is wrong with this place,
Yeah.
And I guess to wrap up the Calle Luna, Calle Sol thing, I think one of the things, as you said, that gets people's attention is, why am I slowing down the coro? I mean, why is it? Well, a couple of things. When I studied at Berklee, I think it's been a little bit rebel, with an intention, because again, I mean, the idea of making this arrangement was already kind of like a little bit of a protest of my own. But the thing is that one of the very first rules that they teach you at Berklee when you're learning arrangement and all of the stuff is that you have to avoid certain intervals, flat nines, things that they teach you at in school. But I love this teacher, this arranging teacher that I had, that he said the rules are there also to break them when you have a good reason to break them, right? So the coro says, mete la mano en el bolsillo, saca y abra tu cuchillo y ten cuidado. I mean, it's like you are describing something that is dangerous, something that is wrong, something that is, is a harsh sound. It's a harsh sound. So that is the perfect spot to add a lot of tension. So I don't know if can you hear the piano a little bit?
Yeah, yep.
So the melody goes, right? But if I do this, right? To add that tension at the very beginning of the coro, that is already, again, that's another punch in the nose. Right there. It's like, mete la mano en el bolsillo. That is exactly what I wanted, because having that dissonance there, it makes a big, big, big difference. It makes people go, whoa, from the very beginning of the song.
Right.
That's the idea. Because it's really, I mean, it's not a happy song, and I'm not using this element in a happy song. No, it's a very, very harsh thematic. So that's why I'm using that element as well. And why did I slow down? Because I wanted that dissonance to be stretched out and to be not just, because if I didn't slow down, it sounded like this. So it sounded like a mistake. But if I do this, then people know, no, this is not a mistake. There is something wrong intentionally. It's like I'm stretching out the spot. I mean, I could have stretched out this. No, I'm stretching out the spot where the dissonance is.
Man.
So that's why basically it's like, yeah, I'm breaking rules and I'm doing it with a reason, with a good reason, and I am making I'm putting some emphasis on it. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's why at the end, all of this, I mean, I have to say that it was the very last song to add to that album, and is my favorite my own personal favorite arrangement from that album for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Because all of it, I mean, when finally, and I've seen people's reactions at the very, very, very end when everything wraps up, and you hear the very last Calle Luna, Calle Sol, and the song ends right there with that coro again. And everybody that I played that song, they are like out of breath. They are like, what just happened? What just happened? What just happened? To me, that is what is important when you pay tribute, or when you to make a rendition of something. It's like, I mean, some people has asked me, why don't you write an arrangement or your own version of Pedro Navaja? And I'm like, dude, no way. No way. There's no way I can make my own arrangement, my own personal original arrangement of Pedro Navaja that is better than the original. It would be too much. It would be too much. If I am not able, or if I don't consider myself able to make it like that, like Calle Luna, Calle Sol, then I don't do it. Yeah. I mean, there are some things that is better maybe not to touch them.
I've had this discussion in different drives, different commutes that I've had, where different friends, and I show them the song and I'm like, hey, check this out. Tell me what you think about this. That's the first thing that they're thrown off by, just the time feeling drag. The chorus comes in, the bass comes in, and it's killing. It's amazing. So thank you for sharing that story. I really always wanted to know.
And a very cool anecdote too is that, I don't know if you know John Benitez, the bass player.
Yes, incredible. Yes.
We were hanging out, actually, because none of us were actually playing in the gig, but we were hanging out at this place called Guantanamera in New York.
Okay.
Where Pedrito Martinez used to play and all of that. I mean, all of that. Guantanamera was a very, very important spot. It became a very important spot. So anyway, I mean, musicians, we were just sometimes just hanging out there. And I remember that John Benitez told me, dude, man, your album is just insane, this and that. You know what? You know who's a fan of yours? I'm like, no. And he says, no, but seriously. I mean, he's a fan that when he goes around giving lectures and clinics and master classes and he actually puts your album and plays on top of your album in front of audiences. And I'm like, who are you talking about? I said, Dave Weckelman. And I'm like,
wow,
what are you talking about? It's like, Dave Weckel loves your music. And he said, I played a little bit of your album to Dave because he was actually playing in some clinics with Dave. And since then, Dave Weckel, he became kind of like a follower of Clave Secreta stuff. And he always says in all of his clinics that that when it comes to salsa or to Latin music, that he always puts, the Clave Secreta as an example of what fusion, that's what you were saying before.
Yeah.
It's how you do some kind of fusion of the Cuban thing with something else. And I think that for us, also going back to the previous question, that is what made me decide to, take the name Timba from it. Because fusion is not necessarily Timba. I mean, you have to leave space for people to wonder, okay, what is this thing?
Yeah, that's good.
Don't give it, don't, I mean, if you imagine that you are a very, I don't know, hectic chef that you like to, and you have a very broad, big menu of different things and spices and stuff like that. But the name of your restaurant is Kevin's Burgers.
Yeah.
If you are serving, I don't know, something else, anyway, people are going there thinking that that's what you serve,
Yeah, that's good. I have a lot of respect for Dave because a lot of people don't know this about him. But when he started playing his version of songo, people call it the American way of playing songo, right? But a lot of people don't know that Dave studied with Changuito.
True.
At the very beginning. There's old videos of him trying to study and just repeat the pattern of songo, and Changuito's correcting Dave Weckel. And I'm like, dude, this is incredible,
True. I had the pleasure of, because of course, I mean, I have to say that before I decided to study piano seriously, my instrument was the cello, as I said before. I mean, that was my thing. And to me, the piano was more like a hobby. I was just, just playing a little bit of keyboards here and there, playing Venezuelan music, playing a little bit of salsa, but that was kind of like until a group of friends of mine in Venezuela, they said to me, I think I remember it was 1988, 89, something like that. And these friends of mine, I remember I was playing some Venezuelan style of music called gaitas with them. I was playing gaitas, and these friends of mine, they told me, because they saw me playing a lot of guaco music and starting to play, chords with a little more tensions in it and this and like that. And they told me, Gonzalo, have you listened to Chicoria Electric Band? And I'm like, no, what's that? What's that? And it's like, you haven't heard that? That's going to change your life. And it's like, well, I mean, let me search for it. Of course, I mean, that, again, this is late 80s, so no internet yet. So to find an album, to find a CD of, Chicoria, that was crazy. That was hard. But still, I mean, I got a hold of at least a couple of albums. The very first album, I remember the very first Electric Band album. And I became like their most, like, I learned so many tunes. I mean, the solos, Chicoria solos. I mean, I could barely play piano. I was just taking a little bit of basic keyboard at the conservatory. And I already was transcribing Chicoria solos, like I mean, because I became seriously like a groupie in Venezuela. But, so anyway, that was what made me decide when I applied to Berklee. I was already like playing keyboards and piano with so many groups in Venezuela. And what made me decide to go for it big time and go to Berklee in Boston, and I graduated at Berklee as a jazz piano major, it was Electric Band, and it was always Weckl. To me, that was my inspiration. Weckl, Chicoria, Patitucci, Marienthal, and Frank Cambali. So anyway, these guys, that was the gasoline that got me going, right? So when John Benitez tells me this story, no, Weckl is your fan. I'm like, dude, come on, man. Seriously? Seriously. Yeah. So that was that. Years later, maybe a couple of years later, I run into this very young cat, Sebastian, I forgot his last name. He's a very young, talented drummer from Venezuela that I met in some gig. And he comes to me, it's like, you're Gonzalo Grau. He's like, yeah, man, I have to tell you this. I'm a drummer, and I took this master class in a hall, full of drummers from all over the world. And Dave Weckl was giving this lesson, and he starts playing your music, and I'm like,
so it's true.
So this kid tells me, man, it would be my honor if do you know Dave? And I'm like, no, of course I don't know Dave. It's like, do you want me to connect you guys? I'm like, of course, yes, definitely. So I gave this guy my email, and just randomly, just like that, out of the blue, I mean, one day I open up my email, and I see Dave Weckl. He writes to me an email saying, Gonzalo, very nice to meet you. I'm your fan, Dave, and your music is amazing, and this and this and that. And I'm like, I'm flipping out. I can't believe it. Man. So I connected with Dave. We shared a couple of emails, and the next time I was there in LA visiting Fausto, recording some of his songs for his own production, I was there at LAX waiting for Fausto to pick me up. And I was like, let me just see if Dave is around. Maybe it's a good chance to meet the guy. And I wrote to him an email, and he replied, yes, I am home, and it would be amazing to have brunch with you and your friend Fausto. So, man, I mean, it was a trip, because it's the way to me, it's kind of like, it's how you call full circle. I started with that, copying these guys, transcribing these guys, and I did my own thing, having this influence, heavy influence on fusion and all of this music from these guys. Somehow this music goes all the way to their ears. And there I was in LA having brunch with Dave Welkel, and he was kind of like interviewing me, asking me questions. How do you record this? And why did you make this coro like a little bit slower? And I'm like, really, I cannot believe this. But anyway, I mean, it is definitely I can't say that we have done, or I have done, a lot of work with Clave Secreta in terms of touring, or in terms of, I don't know, releasing an album per year. But I'm very proud of what we have done.
Yeah.
We are about to release our third album, and I have to say that, I mean, for many reasons. I mean, it's at the end, I realized that our mission in music is not necessarily to tour the world and to become like the next, I don't know, Los Van Van. I mean, there is already Los Van Van there. But I guess our mission, my own mission in life, is to be myself as a composer and as a arranger, as a band leader. I guess my mission is to, whatever I'm going to say it my way, I'm going to put, I'm going to leave that there. It makes, to me, I come from a very, very heavy musical background and music, I guess, family history in terms of music education. And at the end, with all of that, to do something that sounds like Mark Anthony or sounds like La India, or whatever was commercial back in the 90s, it was just not being me. I guess one of the things that I like to always say and suggest to young musicians is like, try to find your voice, as a writer, as an artist. And that's one of the hardest things to do, because the market is very hard on new stuff. The market doesn't want, oh, okay, this guy sounds a little bit different. You sound very original. So yes, but let's do something that is more bachata like this, that is right now very much happening and selling, because we want to make the money, When you are when you are a true artist, you have to be a little bit more, I guess, honest or faithful to your own thing. Whatever is it that you are carrying in your, I guess, in your education, in your baggage, because we all carry a very beautiful baggage of stuff,
Yeah.
We all have our own suitcase of influences and stuff that we have listened, from Michael Jackson to whatever. I mean, you name it. And the beautiful thing is that everybody carries their own personal suitcase with different amounts of, even if we have heard the same thing, maybe you have a little bit more Michael Jackson than me. So that makes your own influence, your own suitcase, a little bit different than mine.
Yeah.
So it is very important for an artist to find your own voice, to find your own mix of different elements, and to give that mix an output, to put that out there is so freaking important. To me, that was my thing. And I realized that maybe the hard way, because at the beginning, of course, I was a little frustrated. Oh, we didn't travel that much. We haven't toured the world. The Clave Secreta haven't. Sure, I mean, we have never had like a serious management behind. I had a little bit of help of my ex-wife when she was trying to manage the band back at the beginning. But we have never had the muscle behind. The only thing we have had is music from the musicians of the band and from myself. That's it. With the only motivation and the only true gasoline behind the engine of Clave Secreta is music and friendship. That's it.
That's
No
good.
commercial, nothing. No,
Yeah.
we don't have a record label behind pushing us or, okay, let's make a next album and we're going to tour the world and we have this concert here, this concert there. I mean, no. The only motivation of this, and that's what I'm saying, that the only and the main I would say the main my north with this project is to make music, is the arrangements,
Yeah.
if the songs, is to leave not necessarily 40 albums, but if I'm going to leave one or two or three albums, they're going to say something, you know.
Yeah, that's good. You actually
I
answered my question because one of my next questions was going to be what advice you had for aspiring musicians, people that are trying to get into the industry and
Yeah,
really succeed. But everything you just said answers that question.
thank you. No, it's very important. I mean, it's a very tricky time because we're dealing again with the exponential growth of technology. Is so out of control that, I mean, when I was becoming I guess, an artist, in my early 20s, uh, not even the MP3 was out. Then
Hmm.
the MP3 was out, the first iPod, and in a matter of a few years, then it's like, wow, we can have so much music in just one of these things. And I still didn't understand, okay, how is this really a positive thing? Because I still have in my car, I have a CD player. So I didn't really understand what's up. And you see what happens now with MP3 players. Now iPods are like, I mean, I still have one. I'll show you this because this is, I think I still have it somewhere.
You have the classic?
Look at
Oh
this.
my gosh.
Of course, filled with a lot of beautiful stuff. But again, it's like, if you see what's going on with the music industry right now, with the streaming, platforms and all of that,
Yeah.
and with everything with YouTube. You remember how was the beginning of YouTube? It was just a couple of friends just sharing videos. That's it. And now everything, I mean, everything is, it's about our advertisements, and it's like it's a whole different world. It's a whole different world. So if you're a young artist that you are, I don't know, like in your early 20s, and you're, of course, I mean, you are way more savvy about, on all of these new platforms and new ways of selling music, becoming an influencer. It's like, influencer, what's that? What is an
Hmm.
influencer? To me, a good influence is Chick Corea. I mean, he got me going with the piano, you know. But now an influencer is just someone that you have a lot of followers. Even if you are a bad example, even if you are a bad influence, you are an influencer because you have a lot of followings. So it's crazy. Uh, that's the world we live in nowadays. So as an artist, I have to say to all young artists out there that, sure, I mean, if you have the muscle and if you have the connections and the money and the, let's say, the record label behind your productions or whatever you're doing, fine. That's always good, maybe in a way. But it's very hard to find your own thing, to make whatever it is that you are doing, to still try to have your own voice and to make it original, to make something that is original. Now with the platforms, I mean, everybody, I mean, you go and you can upload your own music to all the platforms, and that's fantastic. That's amazing. But try always to not to sound like, don't go the easy way. Don't go, oh, Despacito is selling so much, I'm going to make a song that sounds exactly like Despacito because I'm going to try to. Don't go that way. Don't go that way. Don't go that way. Don't try to be, it's like, I mean, that at the end, that hurts music. It hurts music, and it hurts, I mean, there is so much stuff that is being sold out there, that is being like, oversold out there that it sounds exactly the same, the same four chords, the same thing, the same. I mean, I don't want to sound like my grandfather, but the truth is that, I mean, when I go to a concert and I see, I don't know, Stevie Wonder, and I'm like, man, what happened to music? Seriously. Because when you hear the songs, the harmonies, the horn lines, the everything, I mean, and you see these artists playing there with a, I don't know, 16 or 22 piece band, and you are like, wow, what happened to music? Or Earth, Wind and Fire, or is that, I mean, I'm talking about pop music. I'm not talking about obscure avant-garde stuff. It's not Frank Zappa. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Stevie Wonder, or I don't know, Kool and the Gang. And you hear their music and you are like, oh my God, that is so funky and so groovy and so beautiful and well performed and well sang, way before all of this like auto tune and all of this technology was out there. This is people that can really sing, that can really play, that can really arrange music, and that, you know. And nowadays, you see, sure, I mean, if you are using technology as an extra tool for creation, awesome, that's fantastic. If you want to use auto tune to, you know, like this guy Jacob Collier, and it's like, I mean, sure, I mean, there is some very interesting stuff out there, and people that uses technology in a funky way, fantastic. But if you are just creating or making music, you know, like by series, like you know, repetitively the same thing, the same thing, and you are trying to sell the same exact thing over and over and over and over, at the end, who are you? Who are you as an artist? That's to me, that, I mean, tell me something. Tell me something. And do not, that's another thing that I want to tell to people. Do not be desperate to find your voice, because it takes long. It takes long. For some people, some very few people have it easy. Like Michael Jackson. He was 5 and he already was dancing and singing like nobody. You know? When you are very pure, not fusionized kind of artist, most likely it's easier for you, because you know. No, I sing R&B and soul, and I, you know, because I grew up going to church and this is what I sing. Fine. You have it easy because you have it. But the more styles you grew up with, classical music and flamenco music and salsa music and Venezuelan music and this and that and jazz, and the more ingredients you have in your recipe, the longest it takes to discover your own voice as an artist. So if you like Brazil, if you're a singer out there and you like Brazilian music, but you like jazz, you like, I don't know, Ella Fitzgerald, but you also like, I don't know, Jesse Norman, and you like this and you like the, let me tell you, it's going to take some slow cooking. Your process is going to take longer until it's ready, until your dish as an artist, until you are cooked to say something of your own. So that's my advice. Do not rush. Do not rush just because you want to sell and try to make some, honestly, to make some pennies, because nowadays with these platforms, we artists, we only get pennies. So try to be original. Be original. Be original, and don't be afraid to let all of these influences out. To let all of these different flavors that have accompanied you since you were a kid. That is your most precious thing. If you have all of that, don't sell yourself cheap. Don't go, oh, I'm going to make this song with these four chords because everybody's making the same song. So I'm going to make the same thing so I can make some money. No, don't do that. Try to be a little bit more loyal to your own thing, to your own suitcase.
That's
my advice.
That's great, man. That's awesome. Great advice, Gonzalo. Man, I truly appreciate this time that you've taken with me to share all these amazing stories and things that, you know, you've learned throughout your career that have worked for you, and I'm sure are going to work for those that are watching and listening to this podcast. As we're wrapping up, I want to ask you, social media platforms. I know you have a love and hate relationship with it, but anything coming out, your own personal projects like Clave Secreta that you want to quickly talk about?
Yeah, I mean, this year, 2021, hopefully, the new album of Clave Secreta, the full album, because I've been releasing singles, you know, song by song here and there. The full album was recorded also on video, on 360-degree video. And so I'm releasing all of that. And I've been going one, you know, song by song, but I think it's time. Maybe I'll release one more single, but I'm looking into the idea or the possibility of releasing the entire thing. So that's going to happen this year for sure. Other projects, still I have, you know, since we are still dealing with no concerts, so I'm of course always in the talk with friends of mine, Alex Alvear, the director of Mango Blue, that he's living in Quito, Ecuador nowadays. So I always have projects with him. Ernesto Briceño, another dear friend of mine, founder member of Clave Secreta, that he lives in Barcelona. I also have some other projects with him. I mean, I have Fausto Cuevas, actually. I mean, I've been writing songs and producing songs for his own album, solo album, that is going to be sometime. I mean, we have to catch up and keep recording stuff for that production. The biggest project that I have right now is actually an amazing commission that I got, because one of the things that I get, I mean, once in a while, is actually stuff for symphonic orchestras. And I've been writing already for some symphonic stuff. But I have to say that this project that I'm writing, I mean, I already started. And I'm very excited to say that I am writing music for one of my mentors, because the project is for the cellist Yo-Yo Ma. Yo-Yo Ma, so it's basically a double concerto for two solists. It's violin and cello. So the violinist is Johnny Gandelsman. The cello player is Yo-Yo Ma. And this is for the Orchestra of the Americas. And it's basically a double concerto that it would be pre-released this year, sometime in the summer. I think it's going to be released a shorter version that is basically done for social media, for something that is just online. And then the full release of the whole thing, it will be most likely in the summer of 2022. So this is a very big project. I'm very happy to be writing this thing right now. So I have a lot of music to write, a lot of stuff to produce, some other albums and some, but of my own, the concerto, the Yo-Yo Ma concert, and which is going to be dedicated to the Americas. That's basically the theme of it. So it's a beautiful concert, and that and the release of Clave Secreta stuff.
Nice. Awesome. Well, Gonzalo, thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. Hopefully this year, man, things open up a little bit for musicians.
Hopefully, because honestly, I mean, I like a month and a half ago, I played a concert and I felt so rusty. Like seriously, I mean, not only my fingers and my playing in general, but kind of like the whole dynamic of playing with other musicians. It's like, I mean, it's like everything. If you don't do that on a regular basis, you get a little bit like your confidence level gets a little shaky.
Yeah.
everything. But I have to say that we all have to be very patient, because at the same time, I don't want to. I don't like two things. I did one concert over Zoom like this, and I didn't like the experience of playing not in front of an audience. I mean, the audience was there. I don't know, maybe like 60 or 80 people were connected, but there is no feedback. At the end, you play, you finish your piece, and there is no applause. So at the end, it's like, no. I mean, this is not why we sign. This is not what I signed for. This is not my thing.
Yeah.
And also, I have to say that as a salsa player, mostly, I don't like the idea of going to a club to play salsa for something that is not, that is only 30%, capacity, with all the audience that I can't really see their faces because they have a mask, and of course, I mean, most of it is just, people that can't really dance, because dance is not. I mean, so it's like, why then why are we playing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, it's going to take a little bit more time. I'm crossing all my fingers, wishing that these vaccines they really work.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a game changer. If that doesn't work, this is going to take a long time, especially in terms of us being confident again, being, to trust to go out there and be relaxed again and say,
Right.
yeah, I'm going to have a good time, and I'm going to drink this out of this glass, and I don't mind. It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
It's going to take.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I have to say that me personally, because a lot of my work is writing music and producing music, and that's the beautiful thing of technology nowadays, that I can do that anywhere and in my own laboratory here. I'm so, man, thank you very much for this invitation. I had a great time with telling you all of these anecdotes and stories. Because honestly, I mean, this to me is also part of my gasoline, is connecting with people that want, once in a while I get, oh, I really like your music, and I play this song, and look at, I mean, I know the Panayotis lines, and I'm like, man, this is, at the end, that's better than a Grammy for sure.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. No, seriously. I mean, thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 36 with Gonzalo Grau. Tune in for next week's episode.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.